Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Pamela R Haynes here with episode 9 of the Author to Author podcast. Last weekend, we attended the Miss Caribbean and Commonwealth Beauty Pageant at the Rock Tower. We had an amazing time. Huge congratulations to Miss Angola, who placed third, Miss England, who placed second, and the winner, Miss Uganda. It is truly amazing what you get invited to as a published author. If you would like to see photos of our black carpet entrance, then please check out my Instagram page at Loving the Author. In today's episode, I interviewed self-published author, the great Ngoma Bishop. Ngoma and I first met at an exhibition in East London, and we've been friends ever since. Let's jump into his interview now. See you on the other side. Good evening, Ngoma. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, my sister. Just taking it as it comes, you know how it goes.
Well, wonderful to sit down and have this interview with you. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you so much for donating 2 copies of your new book, Spread Your Wings and Fly. Absolutely loving the cover. Couldn't have chosen a better photo of yourself to put on the front, so that was really nice as well.
Actually, I was quite fortunate because it's too long a story to go into now, but it was actually taken by Rankin, who was the royal photographer, and he's a strange sort of circumstances caused us to be in the same studio, and he took a number of pictures of me, and I didn't really know who he was until then. Yeah, so the quality of it is due to his professionalism and the equipment he has, not necessarily not so much me.
Well, he certainly captures the essence of you, and it's going to make a wonderful competition prize for somebody. So thank you very much for that.
Pleasure.
Ngoma,
Mm.
where are you in the world right now? Where do you live?
Depends who you ask, I suppose. All right. I live in North London, right? Between Crouch End and Archway, for those who know North London, not too far from Finsbury Park. Most people, for some reason, I still don't. I've been in Islington for over 30 years, but most people still think I live in Hackney. And I grew up in Brent, so I have a strong affinity with the Brent, some kind of tribe borough in a funny kind of way.
But where were you born, and what country do you mostly identify with?
I was born on the island of Barbados, which may not surprise you, especially that because you knew that already. And I came here at a very, very young age of 8 years old. If I say too much, people are going to start identifying the character with me and thinking that I'm the character and the character is me. But whatever that is, yeah, I was born in the Caribbean island of Barbados, and I've always described myself as being an African born in Barbados and domiciled in the UK. So I came here very early age.
Whereabouts in Barbados are you from?
St. Thomas, the two areas without no sea, St. Thomas and St. George, right? And right close to where they meet each other by a place called Prout Village, which is not too far from Welshman Hall Gully. Or the Sam will know the area for the lion at Gun Hill up the
Yes,
road.
that's right. Yes, I've been there several times. So, what schools did you go to in primary school?
Oh, I went to a school called you know what? It's gone out of my head for the first time now. It was. I'll remember it shortly. I'll remember it shortly.
Okay.
But it was round Tate Hillside up I think heading towards St. George. What's it called? Clifton Hill. Clifton Hill Primary School. Ain't in there no more. I went there. They replaced it with something, some other building and some different things, but not the school. It's no longer there.
Yeah, I've
Mm.
heard of Clifton Hall before. What are your early memories of growing up in Barbados?
Earliest memories. The funny thing is, even at the ripe old age of 67, I know I don't look a day over 25, but I'm 67. Most of my significant memories actually predate me coming here, which sounds weird. So a lot of the emotions that I have, or a lot of the senses, a lot of the smells I remember, lot of the plants and things I remember, what they used to call breaded cheese tree, most of the trees and the flora that I recall are actually from there, you know? Sometimes I think that I didn't learn anything since I come here because everything that I can remember seems to resonate with the island, or and you never know how much of it is manufactured memories and how much of it is real memories. But a lot of my early memories of it actually are parallel to some of the early memories of the character in the book. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So did you fly to the UK or did you go travel by boat?
I did. I came by plane. I think at that time that was roundabout when planes were becoming. I came here by BOSC. BOSC was what later became a merger of Transatlantic Airways and TWA to form British Airways. But at that time, it was BOAC.
Do
And
you
when
remember what year you travelled?
I remember everything very. Yeah, it was 1963, November 1963, and I arrived at. I think no other planes go from Gatwick, but I think at that time it came in at Heathrow, right? And I remember because my father had come here. I when I came, I had no recollection of very little recollection of my mother and zero recollection of my father because, like a lot of us, that came here, I couldn't have been more than about 2 or 3. And I remember my mum saying to me that I used to stand up on the chair and say, he soon come back, he soon come back. And he didn't come back because he thought he was going to come back in a little while. And then I realized he was going to stay there for longer than he thought. He said for my mum, and they both come back together in a couple of years. That didn't happen. And eventually they thought, well, we now have 3 more children, so we better send for him, I guess. So when I touched down at Heathrow Airport, the only way that I knew that they were my parents because they were standing there with a placard round their neck with my name on it, right? And otherwise, I wouldn't have recognized them, and they probably would have recognized me because I was the only child traveling alone. So when I came down them times there pre what do you call it bombing and things, pre all that, right? Terrorism, or as they called it then. You could get as close to the plane as you like. You could go virtually on the runway, right? So when I came down the stairs, I can see these 2 people looking out, and clearly they were looking for me because they had my name on their thing, and that was it really. I was now in England in November in what was the coldest year on record, apparently, since the last 100 years or something before that. So, I wasn't overjoyed with anything really.
So you were meeting your siblings for the first time?
Yeah, I did. I met them. I mean, they didn't come to the airport as I remember, but when I went to what was home, because they were living in Harlesden, and I think within 3 months of me coming there, they'd moved from Harlesden to Kilburn. I think the place was no longer big enough, no practical, and they were sharing space with another family as well. So that was the first time I saw them. I knew of them because I used to write to my parents quite regularly. They would inform me that I had 3 sisters, but I didn't know nothing about them. And I mean, that's a whole new novel in itself. I have to tell you that. I'm currently writing. I'm about to start work. It's not actually a novel because it's based on fact. People who came here from the Caribbean and from Africa as the oldest child to meet siblings that were born whilst they were still in their homeland, and the dynamics, which oftentimes weren't smooth, to put it mildly. So that was me. I had three siblings. By that time, my parents had married because they weren't married when I was born. But by the time I came here, they were married and they had 3 children. So the 3 children carried a different name than me. They spoke in a different way. They liked different foods, carried a different surname and everything. So it was not an easy ride for them as well, I suppose. Looking back on it retrospectively, it couldn't have been that easy for them. But I think they would agree it was significantly harder for me. But then, it's how it went in those times.
I was going to ask you about your name. Is Ngoma your birth name?
No, 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 no. You probably guessed that. Ngoma is a name. It means drum, by the way. The people who conferred the name on me gave it a positive slant, but I assure it's because I make a lot of noise, right? What happened was I was part of a study group, and we were learning Shona, which is Zimbabwe, one of the languages of Zimbabwe, the Shona people of Zimbabwe. And it so happened that by coincidence that most of the guys the males in the group, we met each other because we all happened to be with Zimbabwean women, Shona women, right? Except for one of them, she was I think her roots were Jamaica. But anyway, we became a group of friends, and we decided to learn to speak Shona. And as part of that, we decided that those of us with European names would be given Shona names according to our character. So they gave us all a choice of two names and then told us to pick one. And from then till now, I've been in Ngoma.
That's a lovely story, and I think it's very apt how your name came about as well, because you have certainly made a lot of noise throughout your time being in the UK in terms of some of the activism that you have been involved with, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But just to finish off this Barbados segment, when last did you go home?
I have not been pedantic, but I have a lot of homes. I consider, even though I've never been there, Zimbabwe my home. Consider the whole of Africa my home, and I've no excuse not to be in there because I've been invited to every place from Zimbabwe to Gambia to everywhere, and I keep creating excuse for not to be in there. But the last time you mean Barbados? The last time I went there was about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. My mother was in It was not too long before her transition. She was in her kind of final years, and we realized that she had repatriated back to Barbados, right? Some years before then, and that was always her dream. Unlike my father's, who didn't want to go back to the place, right? She was there. She built a house there, and she was quite happy. My sister, who works for the University of the West Indies, who lives partly here and partly there, she was effectively looking after my mother, but it was a hard job because just her. My mother started to deteriorate, so she had to come here, and it became apparent that she wasn't strong enough. She wasn't going to go back, but she couldn't accept that. It was always, when am I going back home? Am I going back home next week or whatever? So we thought, you know what, we need to give her some sort of closure. We need to go back to the island so that, it probably would be the last, certainly would be the last time that she would travel back. As it turned out, it was. We went back there. She was there for a little while, and she came back here, and then, she didn't really recover. She declined kind of rapidly then. So that was the last time I went there about 5 years ago, and that was the only reason I went there. I've been there since I left in 63. I'd only been there twice previously. One of them, I think, was about 85. That was a year when that's probably the most iconic time for Barbadian calypso, actually, because you had Chicken and Ram and all those songs. You had Gabby, you had all of the classic songs were produced in the year that I was there. I like to think they did it because I came, but that's probably not the case. You had Red Plastic Bag. You had all of them, and I was fortunate enough to meet one or two of them. Spent some time down. I don't know if you know behind where all the minibuses used to be, right? Which reminds me of Kidsite, the minibus, right? It was right behind where all the Temple Yard, and I went back there again about 5 years later, and I never managed to get back there again since until my mum's decline. Really, there's no sensible reason for me not having gone back. My life took strange directions, mostly because of my own. I can't blame people for certain things, and I didn't really get to spend as much time I would have liked to in the land of my birth.
But if money was no object,
Mm.
where would you retire to? Where would you like to see out your days?
You know what? If you'd have asked me that 5 or 6 years ago, without question, I would have said either Barbados or Zimbabwe, right? Now that I have two gorgeous granddaughters, I really can't. And because I know one of them is only 7 and the other one is just over a year, and I really couldn't bear the thought of not seeing the youngest one at least reach 10 or something. I can't contemplate the thought of me leaving this earth and she has no recollection of me. I know it's maybe a strange thing, but so I would like to be, but then it's now not only about me. I'm here with my partner, or my son's here trying to, he's a big man, he doesn't necessarily need me now, but I need him more than he need me, I don't know. But my granddaughters, unless I could come and go every month, or whatever. I know you're a fabulously wealthy woman, and if you wanted to sponsor me for that, then so I've heard. So I've heard. I don't know. I don't know.
If
I
I
don't.
could, I would.
I know
And there
you
is
would.
certainly something about people wanting to spend part of the year maybe in warmer climates and then part of the year in the UK where they can reconnect with children and grandchildren and great grandchildren. So I'm certainly hearing more of a trend of where people are based in two countries, and around this time of year, I suppose they're ready to make an exit to go back to warmer climates. Who knows what the future holds for you, but it could
Indeed.
be a possibility, couldn't it?
Indeed. Just a thought of at the moment, if I want a mango, I have to go over the road and pay exorbitant price for it, and then it don't taste too good. And I miss the thought that just walking down the road and randomly picking a mango off a tree, you know what I mean? Or saying, excuse me, so you mind if I have a mango? You know, I mean, just, it just, it's like, oh gosh, you cannot be in four places simultaneously. So what are you gonna do? Sometimes the reality dictate what you do.
Well, shall we move on to the book then? Where did you get the title from? Spread Your Wings and Fly.
There's a recurring theme in the book. There's several recurring themes. Flight, hence the wings on myself. The butterfly, which is a theme running throughout the book from the beginning to the end. The horizon, which separates the sky from the thing and through which the plane will go. So I don't want to give away too much of the plan, but there's a lot of the kind of spirituality of it. The protagonist, the character, central character, is a child who is very much impacted by a lot of different aspects of spirituality. You know what I mean? Is at a time where the whole region and possibly, you had the Federation not too long fall to pieces, and you had different things, political things happening. You have people with different ideas. Rasta hadn't fought whole as yet as such, but there was, you know what I mean? There was a lot of spirituality and things going on. So the whole concept of flying or moving about or moving from one realm to another realm, and also transitioning or death has always occupied maybe an unhealthy degree of thought in my mind. So a lot of those things are right, because I write short stories as well, and a lot of them have to do with spirituality or the mystical or transitioning from life to death or trying to determine what's life and what's death and all these kind of things. So they all kind of merge up in a kind of soup. So the title kind of wrote itself, The boy was destined to leave the island for reasons totally outside of his control, obviously, and then the kind of name just presented itself, really.
And Goma, what came first then? The poetry, the short stories? How did it all start off?
The poetry, most I'm known more for poetry than anything else. And the first poem I wrote, which I'm not going to recite now, although I should know half of them off by heart, I'm not gonna. But it's really dealt with the situation I found myself in when I came here, when I was about 12 or 14, soon after I came here, and you had the rude boys and the skinheads and people talk all the time about don't want to get too controversial, but people talk all the time about when you used to see no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. Now I don't know if it's my memory fading me or not, but I don't recollect seeing the no Irish that much, right? And as for the no dogs, I know that there was RSPCA in Kilburn when there wasn't adequate provision for a lot of us as human beings from the Caribbean. So I kind of have a slanted view on that. But I grew up in an area, Kilburn was an area which was synonymous with the Irish community at that time. And it is, but to a much lesser extent now. And I very naively and very, I've never been shy of going anywhere I wanted to go. I went where I wanted to go, and the fact that I had a barbed accent and I was shorter than everybody else and everything never really deterred me. I went where I wanted to go. And sometimes I would find myself in places that if I knew better, I wouldn't have been there. You know what I'm saying? Because when the area started to become active, I just know I would hear some music, a band playing, I would just like the music, so I would go into the pub. And, I never knew that it was a Republican pub or whatever. I just liked the music and I went in there. And a lot of the music in Barbados is very, we're very familiar with country or Irish music in Barbados and across the region. So I liked it and I went in there. And somebody would say to me, what are you doing here? I say, same thing as you. And then they would laugh and it would be that. But it could have got difficult because I had friends that were from Southern Ireland and friends that were from Northern Ireland and didn't have a clue why some of my friends didn't like some of my other friends. So that was it really. But I wrote when I started to realize how things was. I started to write a lot of poetry, and I wrote a lot of poetry that dealt with the heart of the matter. Really, we had Enoch Powell talking about rivers of blood, and so on and so on and so forth. And I was responding to that from as early back as I can remember. At that time, you didn't have much of our history taught in schools. In fact, you had very, very little of it. So you relied on either the reggae music or Soledad Brothers or the Black Power movement in London or Curtis Mayfield and so on and so forth. And that's where I got my thing. But I've always loved words, always from the time I was about 4 or 5. I've loved words, always. And from the time I was about 6 or 7, I was reciting Wordsworth and things like that. I just liked it. I mean, and at school, nursery, young school back home and also in England when I was here, people thought I was a bit strange because the kind of songs that I liked all kind of songs, and I'd be singing the Ash Grove and all kind of songs. Then they'd be looking at me out the corner of their eye, but it didn't bother me because I didn't really have no sense of shame or not like that. I just liked it, so I sang it. And if I wanted to go over to listen to that, I went to that. And it's so how it's always been. I still have a very wide. If you were to spend 3 hours or 4 hours with me and listen to the range of music I listen to, you'd wonder what the hell. That's how it is. That's how I am, really. So the poetry came first, really, and then the songwriting. I write a lot of songs as well.
I heard one just before I came online and I got quite emotional. I was going to ask you what the track is called because I couldn't find the title, but it ended with something like African Heart from a Caribbean Start within a Trident.
That's actually a song I co-wrote with David. I can't remember. We've never actually met. We never actually met, but I was doing some work with Hackney CVS. It's very, very enterprising of you to find that. I was doing some work with Hackney CVS, right? Because occasionally they would have me and I would read poetry to they have a pensioners project and I would read or work with them and they always enjoyed it. They were predominantly, but not exclusively from the Caribbean, and they would always enjoy it. Every year, quarterly, they would produce magazine and always they would make sure they have at least one of my poems in the magazine, right? But I kept low profile. I don't promote myself in that way. I just kind of low profile. Anyway, they had a project which they were running, which they had commissioned 3 or 4 writers to do some work. They were professional songwriters. Somehow along the line, somebody introduced me to one of them, and he's a English gentleman, but very progressive and very aware worldwide, quite younger than myself, but very aware. And he particularly liked some of the stuff I was writing. And he was writing something, he wanted to write something about the Windrush experience. So somebody thought it'd be a good idea to put us together. So we together, he's a musician also, which I'm not, right? Basically, the words, just broadly speaking, the words are mine and the music is his. So we did a collaboration and it worked like we're doing now. So he would do a melody and send it to me and I'd listen to it and say, no, man, blah, blah, blah. I'd put some words and he would reshape it and that's what I think about it. And eventually we got to a thing which kind of again, it actually was telling my story, really. It was telling my story. My father came here, because my story is told by me and by others in many different ways. If you look at it, it correlates to my situation. My father came here and like a lot of our fathers and mothers and pioneered a certain, oftentimes, always it was of good intention, but oftentimes we end up thinking, you know what, they may have meant well, but that might have been one of the worst moves they made because I've never, ever, ever felt at home here. But still, I'm here and I go where I want because in one way, everywhere in the world is mine, whether I've been there or not. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I thoroughly enjoy it. It moved me. The gentleman's name is David Giles,
That's right.
and obviously the words by you in Ngoma Bishop. But what is the track actually called? I didn't catch that.
I remember, I can't remember. It's really weird because a lot of the stuff that I've done, people find it odd that I can't remember them or remember the title, them or remember how the words or whatever. But there's 2 reasons for that, really. One is that whilst my memory is excellent in certain ways, it's almost non-existent in other ways. And also, I've always approached my writing in this way, especially my poetry, because I was really determined not to be writing stuff that sounded the same all of the time, right? I would write something, but I wouldn't commit it to memory. right? Which meant that every time that I picked up a pen and I approached an idea, I was approaching it from a fresh vibration. If I happen to go to, let's say, for instance, I happen to go to a book reading in East London by a woman who had two books out and was writing a third or something, I might write something inspired by that whole situation, which had very little to do with anything outside that scenario. You know what I'm saying? So that's how a lot of my work came about, an experience that moved me or that meant something to me, and it would lead to me being moved to write something about that. So it was almost in a vacuum. It had nothing to do with the fact that earlier I had done this or that. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so that's how a lot of my work came about.
And that's how we met, didn't we? We met because of your poetry. You gave a rendition of one of your poetries at a Black History Month event with Sly, the photographer, when she did the Locks exhibition.
I
You were
forgot.
one of
Yes, so I did.
the
So
guests
I
that
did.
was there.
I did.
Yeah, yeah. So you may have
Yeah,
forgotten, but I haven't forgotten
I
how we
did.
met.
I remember where we met, but I didn't remember what I was doing there. I remember your presentation. I remember you gave me a signed copy of the book. Yeah.
Okay, but yes, Sly met me. She found me on social media and asked me to take part in the Locks exhibition that she was putting
Yes.
together for Black History Month. Very, very well attended. And
Yeah.
obviously, I met you there as well and fell in love with your poetry. So, Ngoma, tell us what your book is about. Is it fiction or non-fiction?
A lot of it is fictional, right? But it's based on a perception of a very young child who is eminently due to leave for the UK, who bears a remarkable resemblance in some ways to myself. However, he is subject to the influence of a whole range of different people, right? And all of these people kind of, I mean, there's a priest, there's a revolutionary. There's all kind of people who come in from different kind of backgrounds and bring these influences to him or impact him in different ways. Some of them positive, some of them not. He's trying to make sense of the world, what's real and what's not real, and he comes to some conclusions pretty early. One, that he has to be careful what he does and what he says because it depends on who you say it to. And he starts to look for or to see things that other people can't generally see. So his whole relationship with the horizon and his perception and understanding of what it is and how it differs from other people's perspectives. When he looks at the sky and he sees these things that the other people cannot see, and he takes it for granted, well, they can see it. But then when he realizes they can't, he thinks, okay, I have to move carefully because in this it's a strange world I'm in where things are obviously there and people can't see them. So, but there's a lot of underlying messages and things and concepts that are there, Also the whole thing about what is life, what is reality, because sometimes for different people it clashes in a certain way, So all of those themes are there. He knows that there will come a time very soon where he's going to be literally beyond the horizon, you know what I'm saying? And go to a place that he knows little of, to meet people that he no longer knows. And he's established certain friendships over here, one of the most potent being the horizon, really. You know what I mean? Because it represents so many things for him. The sky does, and so it's about his beginning on a journey. That's what it's about. It's about him beginning on a journey. Where the journey goes, because the journey stops the day after he leaves there. And the story starts about 3 or 4 weeks before he leaves. And a lot of things is crammed into that. And that part of it finishes when he touches down in England. Okay. So either it will stop there or other things will happen. I don't know yet,
Do you have the book with you? And would you like to read, in particular, the poem at the beginning and a little bit from chapter one?
Okay. All right. I think I can do that. This one's called Mongoose to the Flying Fish. And you know the significance of both the mongoose and the flying fish, the Barbados, and I hope many will. I'm going to assume that they do. If you could up and fly away, just spread your wings and fly from the constraints of mortal bones, from sea to starry sky. If you could sustain your mighty leap, O noble flying fish, would you forsake this earthly realm? Oh, would that be your wish? Well, I'm sure I know what I would do, what option I would take. I'd fly to where all sleep at peace and need not fear to wake. Perhaps we could fly away together, O scaly friend of mine. leave hook and trap where they are set, and never look behind. But I know that it will never be, no matter how we try, because you can never leave the sea, and I will never fly.
Before you move on, I know the relevance of the mongoose to the flying fish, but my listeners won't. So perhaps you want to explain what the significance is.
The flying fish, before it ran away to Tobago, where it's gone now, because it's deserted the shores. The flying fish is historically the part of the main national dish. It's also to be found on our flag or trident and other things indicative of the sea. The mongoose was bought, like a lot of things, was bought to the Caribbean to get rid of a pest. I think it was the snake. I forgot the pest it was where to go. But as often happens, as happened in Australia and different places, they miscalculated. So they bought a creature that was nocturnal to capture something that it would never see because they were out and about at different times. So they ended up with two pests instead of. So that's how mongoose got to the island and to those islands. There is a part in the book where the mongoose meets a particularly unfortunate and sticky end, because you may or may not be old enough to remember when it was seen, much like the bullfighting in Spain, it was seen as a fun thing to do to capture the mongoose, to put it in a cage and to pour petrol on it and set it alight and that kind of thing. I don't know if you'd recall that kind of thing. I'm glad you don't. But those are some of the things. What I've done, I've introduced some of the elements, some of the things that were prevalent at that time in 63, which fortunately have gone, and some of the things that were pleasant and unfortunately have gone. You know what I mean? So it's a snapshot into how it was in 1963 and how things were moving away from certain things, both positively and negative, moving away from certain things. So that all these things were impacting and influencing the child. And a lot of the consequences of them wouldn't actually manifest till many, many years later. So you won't see that in the book, but you can see the beginning, the traits of where things might go for him.
Well, thank you for the explanation. Would you like to read from chapter 1?
Okay. It was a promising mid-September, early Saturday morning in 1963. The West Indies Isle of Barbados, or BIM as it's known to the locals, sat where it has always sat, in the Caribbean Sea, adjacent to the normally placid waters of the North Atlantic Ocean, northeast of Venezuela. The beautiful silvery white sands of the island's west coast were receiving their usual warm and golden kisses from the blue-green waters, and the gentle trade winds brought the fresh, aromatic smell of pure paradise. Countless flying fish, one of the main ingredients in the island's national dish, were leaping and frolicking from the sea to the air and back again in an apparent attempt to experience this Eden from all its many perspectives. Under a canvas of blue velvet, huge clouds, soft and fluffy like gossamer wool, floated serenely by, most of them decorated with orangey red staffs running through their entire length. The overall impression was one of a magnificent flock of unshepherded celestial sheep, grazing and wandering silently in an enormous pasture of moss as blue-green as the sea beneath it. A small single-engine airplane flew by almost noiselessly. It moved quickly on as if to cause minimum disruption to the idyllic scene. Trailing behind it was a curling plume of grey and white smoke that remained in the windless heavens long after the flashing wing lights of the aircraft had vanished, along with the plane's monotonous drone. A triangular green, purple, and black kite took advantage of the breezes at a lower altitude, flying with its ribbon tail stretched out proudly behind it. The gauze paper toy had earlier escaped the manipulation of some small child, only to become firmly attached by the string in its nose to the upper reaches of a tall coconut tree that swayed to and fro in the soft breeze, though too gently to dislodge the kite. Meanwhile, wolf-like and unnoticed, a small dark cloud hovered furtively and menacingly at the far edge of the dawn sky. Below, the air positively vibrated with life, a cacophonous medley of creature sounds that enhanced the already enchanted atmosphere. The sun was still low enough to allow direct eye contact, but sufficiently high to cast its golden veil over the little village, like an all-encompassing silken cloth, both decorative and protective. Sunlight glistened off the topmost branches of the dew-saturated trees and sent elongated shadows tumbling to the earth along with heavy globules of water. The dawn chorus was led by a countless number of songbirds of a dazzling variety of hues, plumage, and sizes. They competed with one another for visual command of the ear, and with the buzzing bee and the chirping cricket for the melodic honors. A troop of ducks on some urgent and unknown mission flew by, punctuating the symphony with an irregular discord of quacks that sounded strangely wonderful. A boy stood and surveyed the scene about 100 yards or so from the edge of the village where he lived and about the same distance from Hopeton Gully. It was a vantage point that provided him with the cover of the surrounding trees and foliage, whilst not preventing him from seeing any advancing people before they saw him. And more importantly, it gave him a clear line of vision to the horizon.
Thank you very much. I'm gripped already, so I already know that I'm going to carry on reading this book. But is Hopetown Gully and the Applethwaite Sugar Refinery, are these real places or fictitious places?
Okay, a mixture of both. Applethwaite was actually a sugar refinery. I wanted the place to be vaguely familiar to those who are familiar with the area, but it could have been anywhere else on the island or in the Caribbean. So I messed about with some of the names of the areas. I created different parishes and things like that, and changed the names. They say change the name of the guilt to protect the innocent or whatever. So I changed, some names were changed, and some of the characters were based on real people, and some of them were entirely fictitious. And some of the naughty things that happened were entirely fictitious. I'll leave it there.
No problem at all. But tell us, when was the book published?
Okay, you know what? It's I'm realizing how many people have a similar story to stuff. I wrote the book about 12 years ago, but it was some people told me how much they enjoyed it, but I was very unhappy with it. The editing of it was atrocious. The proofreading was almost non-existent, and those that were more astute recognized that it was for and would say, it's a very good story, but the thing's very thing. In my kind of arrogance and ignorance, I just didn't see none of that. But when I put it down about, I look back at it, I was so disappointed with it that I just put it out of my head altogether. And then some years later, I thought, you know what, let me revisit it, because now I was able to revisit it from a totally different perspective, as we've discussed this, and as an author, you would know this. Even as I'm reading it today, because what I've done, I've got various edits of it all over the place, and sometimes I get them all mixed up. And I only had I got 3 copies of the book, so I gave you 2 and 1 to somebody else, and I forgot I needed 1. But I'd ordered 100, but I don't know, Amazon and everybody, it's always a problem with something, right? So they didn't come when they were supposed to come. And when I looked through the one that I had, I think one of the ones I gave to you, I realized that there were still some errors, but they weren't huge problematic errors. But to me, every little error is an error. So I'm halfway between leaving it as it is, because I think I've still got about 10 months where I can make adjustments to them. But I'm thinking, well, if some people have bought it as it is, and then I sell it to them, and then, what's the implication of that kind of thing there? So I'm not really sure what I'll do, whether I'll just leave it or whether I'll take up the offer of the publisher and make those, point out those, because after about 10 months or so, the window to do that goes. So I don't know what I'll do. But yeah, I just put it down for about 10 years and left it. I didn't promote it, didn't tell nobody about it or anything. And first thing I'm going to do, there's already some libraries that have promised to put it in their library, some even without seeing it. I know that what's the one down by you? What's that area at the borough where your event was?
That was Redbridge.
Redbridge. I'm pretty sure it's going to be in Redbridge. I know it'll almost certainly be in Newham. I suspect it'll be in Newham. I know it's going to be in Hackney. I know it's going to be in Islington and possibly Brent. So one of the things I will be doing is those libraries that have already stocked it, I'll be asking them to destroy the copies they have of it and just retain this one. So we'll see how it goes.
So what's coming up? I understand you have a book tour that you've arranged? Where are you going to be?
I've got 3 lined up already, and the only reason I didn't do any more is because I thought, I better wait till these books come, because it was getting into a problem. I've got about 4 or 5 radio appearances lined up with Judith Jacobs and with all kind of people, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to ease up on this until I have the book in my hand. There's a library called the Dalston C.L.R. James Library, which people may know of, and people hopefully will know of C.L.R. James. Right? They may not know that the council was going to take the name C.L.R. James off of the library. Right about the time I was writing this book, there was a huge campaign which I was had the honor of fronting, where the council said they were going to build a brand new plush place, but the new plush, I'm paraphrasing, the new place was so great that they didn't think it should have the name of a low life black man on it, right? So me and them clash up. And I told them that they would have to keep the name, and they told me they wouldn't. Well, when people go past there now, they will see the name is there, C.L.R. James, on the new building. And we had a conference there a few days ago. I think it was the day after I was at your thing, because all kinds of stuff was happening. We had a thing, the C.L.R. James legacy thing, which I'll send you more information about that. And we invited people to become involved with that. And the council has pledged to building a plaque to put outside of the building, so people don't keep saying Councillor James, C.L.R. James, and even councillors keep talking about Councillor James. A long way of answering your question. One of my appearances is going to be there, right, at the Dalton C.L.R. James. One of them is going to be at the Islington Central Library, which is the library which is closest to the Highbury Station. And the third one I've arranged so far is going to be, where's that going? Oh, that's going to be at New Beacon bookshop, right, in Stroud Green Road. I've got a couple of campaigns which are going on. There's a campaign to take the name Leopold off of a school in Brent. So there's a conference on the 5th of November. So I have to be, because I'm already stretched out. I've got radio appearances, signings, the conference going on, and other stuff going on. So I'm gonna have to think out how I'm gonna move on, because I don't really want to get a stroke and dead. Not now.
No, not at all. But to be clear, on the Friday, the 28th of October, you're going to be at the C.L.R. James Library in Dalston. Then on Thursday, the 10th of November, you're going to be at New Beacon Books. And then on Saturday, the 19th of November, you're going to be at the Central Library in Islington. So I suppose people in London, they can go online and find out where you're going to be. And if they want a copy of your book, how can they get hold of it?
Well, at the moment, it's on Amazon, right? And all they need is the title of the book. If they put in my name or the title of the book, or preferably both, then they should get the ISBN number. The ISBN number and the title of the book are really the 2 easiest ways of tracking it down. A lot of people increasingly don't want to get anything off of Amazon on principle, but until we have resources to do our own distribution, right, then sometimes these things are useful, and we have to make use of them if they're useful. You know what I mean? Because somebody living in Yorkshire that might want the book, it's going to be difficult for me to get to them. I'm trying to work out something whereby they can get it by postage, and if people know of it and they contact me at this moment, they email me, then I will give them a reference number, and then once they pay that money and reference and put that reference in, I will post out the book to them. But that's rather clumsy and time consuming. But it's not important. But also there's a distribution thing that's unfolding, I believe. So hopefully soon the book will be available in bookshops, initially throughout London, but certainly throughout the UK at some point soon.
And to set that up, Ngoma, you are on social media, aren't you? So people can find you on Facebook?
Yeah, they can find me there talking all kind of thing there all the time if they want to, you know. I just talk all kind of thing. There's sometimes political things, sometimes frivolous things. Sometimes I post my granddaughter. Sometimes I go on about Tottenham Hotspur. I post what I want to, you see. So, you know, and sometimes people are amused and sometimes they're not. But that's the matter for them, really.
And just for information, really, your Facebook page is Ngoma Bishop's, right,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Ngoma
Yeah.
Silver Bishop, because enough people know me as Silver as well from way back in the time, I can usually tell how long people know me, depending on whether they call me Burville or Silver or Tony or Bishop or whatever. I can place where they know me down to a couple of years.
Excellent. Ngoma Silver Bishop. It's been a pleasure interviewing you and
Right.
spending time with you and getting to know you a bit more. I wish you and your book every success. I'm certainly looking forward to carrying on reading about it. Perhaps you'd like to come back when you release your next book. Do you think that will be a part two to this one, a completely different novel, or more poetry?
I'm actually, at the moment, finishing off. I've probably got enough. I've got an anthology of poetry which I'll be letting loose on the world very soon. I've got an anthology of short stories which are themed, but I'm not going to say too much about that at the moment. But I've got 3 or 4 stories that I'm very happy with, very pleased with. I might do a couple more. I might put them in there. But so I've got an anthology of my most of the selection of the poetry I've written over my life. Okay, and I've got an anthology of short stories that are coming out. Also, I've got, and this is where I'm not very good at keeping track on things, because I've got short stories appearing in different publications and I can't remember the name of them, so I don't. I know that Sandra Agard recently co-created a book, and they have a poem of mine in there called "The Inner City Kite That Yearns for Freedom." There's also a collection of short stories, and it's got one of mine in there. They said I won some prize or another, so they put it in there. The publishing company is called Something or the Other Publishing, literally. So SOAP Publishing. And so there's different pieces of my work appearing in different places, and I've not been very good at being able to collect them and telling people where they can get my stuff. So they tend to find it by chance, or if I'm doing a performance or something. But I've also going to be working on the book, which is it's not fiction. It's the challenges faced by those of us who came from the Caribbean, round about between 55 and about 70, I would say, and who came here into a particular situation, i.e., they came here to join parents who they no longer knew and to find that they had siblings who they were either aware of or unaware of, but they'd never met. You know what I mean? And the impact had on them, because I think that behind that lies a lot of tragedy. Some of the ill fortune that we face since then, some of the psychosis that we ended up with were caused because of the trauma that resulted out of that uprooting, and there was no provision for support of the parents or the young children coming in a totally different culture. Because I was born in Barbados, I was both lucky and unlucky, because I remember when I was at school, when we went from primary school into secondary school. I have to tell you that story when we went separate because it take too long here. But basically, I went to secondary school and they asked me this and that to decide what class I was going to go in. Now, they didn't actually have much choice, because it seems that when I went to the school, I went there on the back of having the highest IQ of any child that was in the school, not just a year in the school, right? So they couldn't justify putting me into any of the classes at the top class. And at that time, they were streamed. Said 1A, 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 1B, 1C, 1D, right? And they couldn't put me anywhere else apart from 1A. But they didn't really like that idea too much, right? And a lot of those who looked like me, generally those who were of dual heritage, was in the one underneath, 1A. Then the majority, a lot of us were in the third one, which was the third down, right? That's where you would find about half and half. And at the very bottom, you'd find most of us. Now, most of us who were in the bottom, they weren't fools, because they went to the same primary school as I did. The only difference that a lot of them have was if they say to you, they would say to a boy, for instance, so what's your name? Now, he's been in the country about 18 months or 2 years because he's coming from infants, and he may not have joined in the beginning, right? So he's no less smart or no less intelligent than anybody else, right? They will say, so what's your name? He said, my name's Stephen, sir. Boof, a bottom class you went. That was all you needed to say. And you was in the bottom class. It had nothing to do with your ability or anything at all, right? Because I was born in Barbados and I spoke a certain way, and also I had the knowledge to back it up and everything, they couldn't really do anything. And there wasn't any black teachers in the school at that time. In fact, the first black teacher they had, his name escapes me, but he became a head of a school in Birmingham. When they were looking into the unfairness that we face, they had one of these, what do they call them, when they get a group of peoples together to do a report, Macpherson type of thing, but not with the police, with education, right? And had 5 people in it, and he was one of them, and he was the only black person in there. Then they had no option but to give him a school as the head. So they gave him a school in Birmingham, which was failing, which was in the dilapidated place. And within a year's time, he licked that school into one of the sharpest schools in the country. So those are the kind of experiences that we had. And, those are some of the stories. When I meet some of my friends of my age, no matter what island they're from and we talk, invariably we realize that a lot of us had similar experiences. And the only reason that this one ended up in jail or this situation was just the circumstances that he found himself in. You're on Kilburn Road and a group of skinners or somebody want to be, so, to survive, you have to carry a knife. I'm sure them want to take liberties if you get straight them and you deal with them, and next thing you know, you're in jail. And that's how it went, Anyway, so it is.
Ngoma, we could talk forever really about the educational system. So perhaps we have to definitely invite you back to talk another time. But for now, thank you so much for being on the Author to Author podcast.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with fellow Barbadian Ngoma Bishop. It is competition time now. What is the name of the school that Ngoma is campaigning for a name change? Taking part in the competition couldn't be easier. Leave me a message on Facebook or Instagram by this Friday for your chance to win a signed copy of his book, Spread Your Wings and Fly. Have a festive week again, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.